Welcome back to Bros in a Landfill. It's not a skeleton in the closet, it's just a guy who really needs a burger.
Your hosts for this week are Ultra Dizzy
Oh no.
and Ultra Try. It's
Ooh,
me.
yes. So which one of us is sun and which one of us is moon?
I'll let the audience decide that one. Post in the comments who's sun and who's moon.
Oh.
So I we've talked about Pokemon on this show before. In fact, our first episode, which none of you should ever watch, was about Ultra Sun.
Everyone should watch it. It was the best episode of the entire series.
I
Take that, Mono. I'm sorry. I'm so
Anyways,
sorry.
so we talked about Sun
Mono,
and
I'm
Moon
sorry. Come back,
on
please.
the first episode. Dizzy ranted about Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. I talked about the anime and stuff, and through talks and stuff, I finally got back around to playing Ultra Moon, and I finally beat it this week. Hooray!
I want it on record. I told you to not do that, and then you did it.
Well,
And
to be
then
fair,
this happened.
I will say the only real reason is because I joined in Lunch's game completion competition he does. So I was already like halfway, like I was like 10 hours into Pokemon Sun and Moon, well, Ultra Sun, and I'm just like, shit. Well, um, I I gotta finish this. I put money into this game. It was digital. I can't like sell it. So
But
let
the
me
thing
just get
about
this.
that is, the thing about that is twofold for me. Number one, I paid full price for Super Mystery Dungeon. I won't touch that game with a 10-foot pole. I
I
don't
mean,
care
fair.
that I spent money in it because my time is worth more than the $60, and the time it would take to play it for me is agonizing.
I mean, fair. And then the second main reason was so I could have this episode where we talk about it and see if I agree or disagree with Dizzy on Ultra Ultra Sun Moon's quality.
Well, I'm curious because I feel like even if you don't like it, which I don't know what you think about it, I feel like even if you don't like it, we will still be in disagreement
Yeah,
because I have
I
some
feel
rather
like I will.
spicy hot takes.
Um, I will say some of the things I'm not happy with it feel very pedantic. Um,
I have so much to say about it that I'm absolutely horrified. I'm gonna make another Dark Souls episode.
oh,
For reference, we did an episode of Dark Souls of this podcast where I just absolutely ran my mouth for an hour and I didn't make a single point. And I'm like, try help me stay on topic,
yeah.
please, because
Well,
I
anyways,
it was
speaking well, just
embarrassing.
speaking of Dark Souls, we really need to do a bros talk with Lunch about difficulty in games and accessibility
Hey,
and
hey, hey,
whatnot.
hey, hey, let's not have these discussions at the very start of our
No,
episodes. We can talk
I
about
was just
just
saying
orb
that like
things in the middle of Pokemon Power, but we
I
don't.
was just saying that that's a conversation to be had in a bros talk. Let's with Lunch
Okay.
because I feel like that'd be a fun conversation. I don't know if Tar would want to take place, but this episode's about Ultra Sun and Moon. Uh,
This episode is about Ultra Sun and Moon, a shit game for.
so
I'm not
what?
gonna quote you,
So
Yahtzee.
what I kind of want to start this whole thing off with is like Sun and Moon is probably like one of my favorite Pokemon games, and this is coming from someone who's not a big fan of Pokemon as a series. Mechanically, I love the concept. I love the world of Pokemon. It's just I'm not a big fan of the battle mechanics, which that's me. So I I got through Ultra Sun and Moon. The first half, like I was about halfway done. I was like halfway through the. Actually, I just started the second island. Uh,
Oh
when
boy, you just got to the bad stuff.
yeah. So
By the way, this is gonna have a lot of Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon spoilers in it, probably,
yeah. So
because there's
spoilers.
no way I can complain about this game without
Anyways,
tearing into every
so
single detail of it.
so when Disney was explaining Ultra Sun and Moon and its problems when we were talking, that's where I was. I was right before the bad stuff, and I was just like, I mean, it just kind of seems like Sun and Moon. The things you're bringing up did sound worrisome, but it's not like it's weird because Sun and Moon in a lot of Ultra Sun and Moon in a lot of ways isn't technically bad. It's not a tech like from a gameplay and like presentation standpoint, and it's in some ways better than Sun and Moon. But what I felt playing through the back half of Ultra Sun and Moon is that compared to Sun and Moon, which felt like a passion project. That's what I really loved about the story and the world and the presentation of Sun and Moon is that it felt like there was a lot of love put into this game. Ultra Sun and Moon to me feels like it was just it was higher ups in Nintendo being like, well, we've got to release another version of our current generation the year after. So yeah, if you have any unfinished ideas you weren't able to get into the previous game, just throw them in and we'll release it a year later. And
Ultra Sun and Moon is the Spike Lee old boy of Pokemon Moon. And
I wish.
if that reference doesn't make sense to you, I'll explain it in two ways. Number one, yes, that's right. I watched Your Movie Sucks on YouTube. Number two, Ultra Sun and Moon is like a bad remake of Sun and Moon. It like does everything the first game does, but worse.
Well, I think what I get the feeling of Ultra Sun and Moon, and this is some speculation, that whole ending arc with Necrozma,
Oh,
I feel like that was the original intention for Sun and Moon. Especially watching the anime, it lines up with the lore of like what seems to be. I get the feeling that they were running out of dev time, so they didn't finish those levels. So they finished that area up, um, and put that in Ultra Sun and Moon and just left it with Lusamine. He's the bad guy in Sun and Moon, which ironically made it a tighter and more like emotionally resonant story. And
Sun and Moon is a kind of a annoying game for me to talk about, honestly, because it's like it's so jeez, especially in terms of story, because the story of Sun and Moon is basically a game that's juggling three plot points or three plot lines all at once with only enough space for one. So the stories are always kind of like interrupting one another.
mm-hmm.
And then Ultra Sun and Moon is really frustrating because it's juggling five plot lines at once, but it didn't make any more room for it. So it's like if Sun and Moon is like three people running down a narrow hallway, Ultra Sun and Moon is five people running down the exact same narrow hallway. And eventually, one of those plot lines has to push all the other ones out of the way and be the number one plot line. And in Ultra Sun and Moon, it was how.
I actually get the feeling that I would have like from playing Ultra Sun and Moon, I would have rathered all the Necrozma stuff be like instead of having the Rainbow Rocket stuff at the end, which just feels like pure fan service that the higher ups in Nintendo are like, yo,
I hated Rainbow Rocket.
I haven't touched that with a 5-foot pole. Like I've started
Oh,
the Rocket episode, but I have no desire to go through with it.
it is so much busy
Like
work.
like
And
it
it's so
it
much
lets
wasted. It's such a waste too of so much stuff. It's like I hate it because of just how just drenched in like the obvious fan service it is, and then I also hate it for all the missed opportunities.
like what I actually would have kind of preferred is that Ultra Sun and Moon was you had the main storyline of Sun and Moon, had the Lusamini battle, go do the Elite Four and stuff, and then afterwards is the Necrozma stuff, and then
Like
okay
as a
maybe
Delta episode, like from Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire.
sort of like I don't like the Necrozma story stuff doesn't bother me too much. It's essentially it's similar. It's similar enough to the anime, though I will say it feels incredibly hollow. That like I was sort of expecting some sort of dungeon or some build up to like lead up to Necrozma, but
Necrozma, I'm on record. I think I was complaining to one of our anime lovers who was got, and I was saying to him like, please tell me the Necrozma story makes more sense in the anime, because I think I remember I don't remember exactly how I got to this, but I came to a phrase that I coined or something where I said Necrozma, better known as because he did, because that's the answer to everything in Necrozma and Ultramoon. Necrozma was a big Ultra Beast thing that came to Earth because he did. He did battle with the Tapus because he did. He got damaged and somehow made Z moves because he did. He absorbs the legendary Pokemon of Alola because he did. He somehow took over a giant tower because he did. He's a dragon now because he did. He crashed back onto Earth because he did. And it's like none of this makes sense,
well,
has any semblance of
well,
like coherency,
well, it
and it's like
actually like
Necrozma has no
well,
anything, and it
well
drives me crazy.
in the game they like, there's actually quite like in the anime there's quite a bit of lore behind Necrozma. The
Thank goodness for that, because
and
the game just tells you he's a crazy thing.
and in the game they touch upon it, but it's not really to the same degree as the anime. Like essentially what happened, like the deal with Necrozma is okay. Necrozma is this being called the Blinding One. He brings light to any like dimension he goes to. So it's implied that he like but he came into Alola thousands of years ago, brought light
Because
to
he
the
did.
world, and, brought light to Alola, and that gave everybody the power of the Z moves. So he's supposed to be like this, this god, kind of like Arceus, like deity.
So he's a good guy who just went crazy?
So
They never
but
really touch up on this.
okay,
And
so
also, how does he absorb Nebby?
okay, so let me continue on with the anime. So in
Okay,
the anime,
fine.
in one of the other like alternate dimensions, that Necroz it's like I think it's supposed to be like the Necrozma's like origin place. Like, this is like his home, like the
Mhm.
place he guards. He just came to Alola before.
Yes.
There was a giant meteor, and Necrozma used up all of his powers to stop that meteor from destroying his home, and that put him into a deep sleep, and then after awakening, which is in the current anime time, he's devoid of power and he's trying to recharge it. The idea he's trying to he goes to Alola to recharge, let's take all the light power that's there to recharge himself to become the blinding one again, so he can go back and bring light back to his world because his world's lacking that power. So that's sort
And
of like the motivations behind Necrozma in the anime.
and how many
And
people know this? Because people are like actively trying to stop him in Ultra Sun and Moon. I think they'd be happy to have their light back.
well, it's in the game. As I said, it doesn't. It kind of just treats Necrozma like
It treats Necrozma as an afterthought, which is not a
yeah.
good idea considering he's like the big bad catalyst that apparently allegedly set everything off.
Yeah. I'm
Again, it's
I'm
like
very
juggling too many stories. They didn't have enough time for him in the game, which is why I have higher hopes for the anime because they have better time management.
but that's why I get the feeling that a lot of this Necrozma stuff was originally like they had a bigger campaign plan around it. They just didn't have the time to flesh it out. It feels very rushed and tacked on. And granted, I think that's why that stuff's not in Sun and Moon, because they didn't have enough. Like, it wasn't developed enough to put in Sun and Moon. In Ultra Sun and Moon, which was to some degree supposed to be the original story, but they still didn't have time to finish what they wanted to finish or add on to it. It's like shit. Well, shit.
Ultra Sun and Moon, if that was the original story, I'm glad they cut out all the Necrozma stuff for Sun and Moon, because Ultra Sun and Moon is a terribly written, terribly executed story with 5 different plot lines going off at once. I keep mentioning this too, like the 5 different plot lines. It's like I would say I would say I like Sun and Moon. I would say that. I would also say it's a game absolutely strife with problems, and one of them is a severe lack of focus, because it feels like every action is contradicting another action.
Well, part of Sun and Moon's problem as a narrative compared to other Pokemon games is a lot of the narrative is shifted to the back half. Usually in these Pokemon games, you learn the narrative throughout, and it comes to this peaking point at the end. Like there's this like rival team or enemy team that are trying to learn about these legendaries or whatever. Sun and Moon is an incredibly like solitary experience, and until after you even when you go to take down Guzma the first time, like you don't even really meet Guzma and the only time you see the Team Skull people is like they're just basically shitting around being assholes. There's no real sense of like narrative cohesion. It just kind of comes out of nowhere in a lot of ways. Like, oh, we need to have it's like, oh, we need to have a bad team and a legendary show up.
I compare Pokemon Sun and Moon, and of course Ultra Sun and Moon, frequently to Pokemon Black and White, because in both Sun and Moon and Black and White, pretty much from the word go, it's an entirely story-driven game. Like, you are always going somewhere because the narrative tells you to, but in Black and White, you have like a relatively large cast of characters and everyone contributes in some way. Sun and Moon has something that I refer to as Sun and Moon syndrome, which is where it introduces a character and then completely forgets about them.
Yeah.
No, like of Sun and Moon, you basically have...
Well, sorry. Part of Sun and Moon's problem is that, and it also goes, I guess, to one of its strengths and to some degree, is that it's got such a robust, dynamic, like, colorful cast of characters. Pokemon in general doesn't like it only Pokemon usually just makes the important characters have personalities, or and even so, like a lot of the gym leaders, Elite Four members, they're just they don't have much depth and personality. They're just a cool design with a interesting personality, but there's nothing really
Well,
more to them. And Sun and
it's like
Moon, I everybody's sort of got a fun, interesting personality, like and a fun, interesting design. Like they're all supposed to be the main characters, and that works in something like the anime where it is more of a slice of life. You have a big cast of characters just goofing around, reoccurring characters and whatnot, and you have a lot of room to have fun and play with it. In the game, it's struggling to be a Pokemon game and Pokemon, well, and like the Alola region in Sun and Moon, and it struggles to find that balance, especially in Ultra Moon.
especially, yeah, I was gonna say, like, Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon, they have, like, that's the thing too. I got into another argument with someone about like Pokemon stuff where they were saying like, I don't see why you're so upset about this. The gym leaders were never given a big prominence, and it's like, number one, that's kind of my point. Number two, Pokemon Black and White, gym leaders were important from the beginning to the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they never really lost prominence. But going back to number one, like, in Leaf Green and Fire Red, you basically met the gym leader and you beat them. They were just supposed to be a boss. Ultra Sun and Moon treats the trial captains with a higher sense of importance, but it doesn't deliver on this higher sense of importance. They're still basically just meet them, fight them, forget about them. But you're told that they're not, or they're treated like they're not, but then they are.
Well, and it's not just that, because I think of something like Shin Megami Tensei, like, or Shin Megami Tensei 4, where like you'll have like these bosses like let me use the Minotaur example from Shin Megami Tensei 4. Is the Minotaur is this big, like impressively designed with this it's imposing like but this imposing like personality and imposing like aura. And in some ways, it's the first really scary boss in the game.
It's basically the first. It's basically the first boss.
It's basically the first boss of the game. But after you beat it, like, yeah, you can summon a Minotaur later in the game, but it's once you beat it, it never it's dead. It never shows up back in the story. But it serves it's everything about its design serves a purpose. Like where in Sun and Moon, it feels like it's a bunch of interesting, cool designs. Like these are, it's like, oh, these are cool people, but nothing seems to serve a greater purpose other than just the mechanical structure of, oh, we have to have challenges.
It's like, yeah, it's kind of like that, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I find it amazing how little steam I have considering the topic we're talking about.
Well, maybe it's easier just having two people because we can go back and forth like this rather than like sometimes when there's a third person, it can.
It's like I have a lot to talk about, but I also don't want to like steamroll you, so I'm like
no. But
here's the thing,
I have a lot. I have a lot to talk about too. It's not like previously with Ultra Sun and Moon, you were the only person who had things to say about Ultra Sun and Moon. You're interested in hearing what I have to say.
What did you think of the changed plot lines of Lily, Gladden, and How?
I kind of spaced out with Lily and Gladden because it just wasn't interesting. Though the How stuff actually kind of frustrated me, especially with when they changed the champion battle.
How is no Kukuri? I'll give you that. He's absolutely lightweight.
Yeah, like I get the idea of like, okay, let's give Hal this final thing, but to some degree in Sun and Moon, I felt like his conclusion before, like, you beat him before going to the Elite Four, like I'm the first one to go and do it, felt like somewhat of a conclusion to his story. It's like okay, like I'll give this one to you, sort of thing. But how come back at the end, especially I think especially for people who've played Sun and Moon, because the Professor Kukui battle is like one of the most like epic. Like for me, that was like one of my favorite parts of Sun and Moon. It was a very epic. It's like this is the guy that like helped you along the way, and he's giving you one final test, one final trial that made sense that way. It being Hao, who you've steamrolled through the game because he's not a good Pokemon trainer, felt very underwhelming.
I was gonna say, it's like everything felt so much tighter in the original Sun and Moon. Ultra Sun and Moon, I mentioned this earlier in the episode. I even said too, like Ultra Sun and Moon is basically a game all about How. Like everything was changed to make it so that How has more prominence, But the problem with that is that Hao doesn't really belong, and he steamrolls over everyone else's plot lines. Like
Yeah, that's
Kakuri as the final boss of Sun and Moon makes sense. He was the first guy you see. He gives you your Pokemon. He shows
and
up plenty of times throughout the
threatening.
entire game.
He's threatening, especially with the context of him being Masked Royal, like where
The
he's
context
like,
of him
like,
making the entire
like,
Alola region,
yeah, like
or the
he's literally
Alola
the
League. He didn't make the region. He's not that
like
strong.
like a little like what's cool about Kakiri is that he's like secretly the best trainer in the region, but he was right by your side all along. And
With Kakuri, you're constantly given like showings of his power without him actually doing anything. Like the Team Skull Grunts are like, come in, like we're gonna mess you up, and he's like, sure. He's like got no fear. He's like, I'll wreck you in like 2 turns.
yeah,
And it like you're constantly given this implication of his strength without ever really seeing it. Even in the Masked Royal fight, he just uses a Rock Ruff, but it's strong enough to take on like House starter Pokemon and type Null and whatever you put out. So you're always given this implication that he has a strength, and then you finally fight him, and you're like, dude, he lives up to the legend. He's strong.
yeah.
But then
And
instead, you
I guess
never fight him in Ultra Moon, and you fight Hao, a guy who has never been strong at all. And in fact, too, Hao's kind of storyline, or at least my reading of Hao's storyline, was always that he never really had any direction. He just sort of had an endless kind of quest for adventure and
Yeah.
strength.
Well,
and that his
whole deal is that he wants to he wants to beat his grandpa or live up to his grandpa's expectations. It's sort of that thing. It's at least in the anime at the very least, his whole thing is like I want to be able to beat my grandpa. In the game, it sort of takes that thing. It's like he reveres his grandpa, and he wants to live up to that expectation and whatnot, and that makes sense to him as a character. But in the original Sun and Moon, I feel like the solemn loss of Hao was a fitting conclusion to his character. It wasn't necessarily a happy end for his character, but it was kind of like an end to his story, but also a new start for him as a person, where he could be like, okay, I gotta find other ways to be stronger at this point. Like I'm not doing.
He couldn't surpass his grandfather, and he couldn't surpass you. And losing to you at the league, he kind of realizes that he needs to stop worrying about surpassing anybody and just kind of do things for himself.
Which and that's sort of what happens with the champion battle as well. But to the same degree, he has that revelation before, like that whole thing worked much better before the Elite Four.
How is undeserving of the attention he's given in Ultra Sun and Moon? In fact, he has nothing to do with most of the things that happen in the game, actually.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of like, at least in the original Sun and Moon, that's sort of what makes Hao such a tragic character, is that he has all these high expectations, these high these high expectations for himself, these lofty goals, but he keeps getting shunted by this new guy that moved into town. But yet, unlike a lot of other rival characters, Hao doesn't have the sense of resentment. He has this like a lowland positivity, this like putting on a strong face. Yes, he's upset, but he's not going to hold it against you. And I think that's what made Hao an interesting character in the original Sun and Moon. To have him be like the final battle kind of devalues that a little bit.
I have to say, honestly, I never thought of Hao that way, and it's a perspective that I'm curious to examine.
Yeah.
Because my problem with Hao was I always felt that Hao didn't belong. Like I thought, like people.
No, but that's the thing. That's the thing. That's what's so sad about Hao is, and I think he sees this as a character. He doesn't belong. He doesn't feel like he belongs, but he's desperately trying to meet people's expectations and belong. I think that's kind of what they were trying to go with Hao, and like he was always just the side character that wanted to be something greater.
Well, then he should have stayed on the sidelines more.
Yeah.
I have many problems with Hao.
I mean, I'm not saying Hao's a great character. I'm just talking about.
Well, the thing is too is, jeez, I'm like I keep harping on Hao, but I'm like trying to lead into other things.
Yeah.
I'm like Hao. I'm not. It's like it's not just that I'm beating up Hao, but it's also that I'm not trying to, and I'm also doing it wrong.
Yeah.
It's like I'm punching Hao in the face, and I'm like, I'm not trying to punch you in the face. I'm trying to shove you, and it's like, what's the difference? It's like one is less painful.
I guess I'll leave it with this with Hao. It's like Hao could have easily been removed from the game. He has no real place in the story or in the plot. But to some degree, that's kind of what makes him interesting because, as the rival character, he has no place. Which he's kind of like. I don't know if I don't know how much this has been done in previous Pokemon games. I don't really remember a lot of rivals from the other games other than like Gary, but that's whatever. The sort of feeling I get from Hao is that like he is the replaceable rival. He could have been replaced by anybody else, and that's what's sad and tragic about Hao as a character, is that he is just a kind of a nobody who hasn't found his place in the world.
I think I figured out my problem.
Yeah.
With this episode, we are. I was gonna say like. We're talking so much about like individual things. I hate. I want like. Let me see if I can open up the floodgates and just say something here.
Okay.
I hate Ultra Sun and Moon on basically every level.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like any of it. Which is funny considering I would say Sun and Moon, the original, is a very solid game. Ultra Sun and Moon makes me angry.
Yeah, no, Ultra Sun and Moon. Ultra Sun and Moon makes me angry. Don't worry, you're not alone.
Well, I'm like, the thing is, like, we're talking like specifically Hao or specifically Kukuri, and I'm like, I think I'm kind of not really in it, and I'm thinking like, I think that's why, because we're just focusing on specific stuff. I want to get into like I have like a lot of pent up anger, and I want to like just burst it all out. I'm pissed off at Lucamini. I'm pissed off at Gladden. I'm pissed off at Lily.
Well,
I'm pissed off at the trial captains. I'm pissed off at these islands. I'm pissed off at the.
But that's because Ultra
Team
Sun
Skull.
and Sun and Moon was an incredibly tight experience with a lot of heart and a lot of emotion and like a lot of passion. Was it entirely perfect? No. Were there very dull, dry parts of it? Yes. But Ultra Sun and Moon feels so incredibly hollow and meaningless. Like it feels like an entire waste of time. There's nothing in there that really means anything or is trying to say anything or leaves any lasting impression. Like there's some cool visuals. There's some cool gameplay stuff. Like there's a lot of neat designs, but as an experience as a whole, it's very hollow and empty, and it feels weird to be that way coming off the heels of Sun and Moon, which was absolutely not the case.
I keep saying this line that I've made up. It's Ultra Sun and Moon is like the bad Hollywood remake of Sun and Moon. It has so much less heart. It has so much it feels like it's copying everything, but it doesn't understand what's happening. It's like there's a scene that drives me crazy.
It's like, but do you know what like really makes this as frustrating is as maybe opposed to something like Omega Red and Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. It's like Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire came out a decade after Ruby and Sapphire. Like this is clearly not the same exact team. It's a remake of an older game. You're not going to come to the expectation that the people working on it fully understand what makes the original Ruby and Sapphire memorable games or great games. Ultra Sun and Moon I think came out like a year after Sun and Moon. Like they're how does a game change this much in a year's time?
Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are trash. Fight me, Eleanor.
I haven't played it. Like I haven't played much of Omega Ruby, so I don't have much to say. I can just infer that like it's more understandable to have issues with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, considering there's going to be different people working on the team, probably a different team altogether. It'd be interesting to see who from Ruby and Sapphire is still working on Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire.
This isn't about Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. This is about frustrating video games. Yeah. Wait, falls under that category.
But also to the same extent, like because Sun and Moon came out the year before, like we played Sun and Moon not long before playing before playing Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. The memories of the game are fresh. The memories of like the experience are fresh, and how it made us feel are fresh. And like it kind of and when Ultra Sun and Moon comes out the year after, it kind of loses all of its goodwill because it's like was Sun and Moon a happy accident? Like did they accidentally make a fun, interesting game? Like maybe it has problems, but it still has a lot of heart and a lot of fun and a satisfying conclusion. like, did they somehow just forget that happened? Was there an entirely different team working on the Ultra Sun and Moon stuff? Because that would be hilarious. Like if Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon were being made at the same time, which they, let's be honest, due to dev time, they probably were. They had probably two
Ultra
different
Sun
teams.
and Moon. See, the thing about this conversation is a twofold. Number one, I've been getting into a lot of arguments about Sun and Moon, so I'm kind of like, A, I'm both a little bit butthurt, and B, I'm like scrambling to make my points because I basically have like an hour to try to say everything, and I'm like kind of bombing it. And B, it's like Ultra Sun and Moon is basically emblematic of all the stuff that I hate about like Nintendo games. Which, let me go ahead and preface that with something else. I don't hate Nintendo games. I like a lot of them. I hate things like Nintendo patterns. Like more is better. Stuff more gimmicks, more gimmicks, more everything's, more this or that. Like bigger and more glamorous and more shiny is better, and it's not, and it's shallow, and it pisses me off.
It's actually really interesting that you mentioned that because like I just finished playing Super Paper Mario yesterday, and it felt very like un-Nintendo in a lot of ways. It was a very tight, concise game, 20 hours, and it had a story it wanted to tell. Yeah, there was definitely some fluff in there that could have easily been cut out, but in general, a lot of the levels were short. Were to the point. Always had some. Each level had something it wanted to say, and then the ending was okay. I wouldn't say it's the best Nintendo game, or it's like good as other Paper Mario games, but it feels weird that Super Paper Mario was as concise as it was when you have like these other Nintendo patterns where like they've been going through this whole thing of re-releasing games with more levels and more levels rather than making new games. Like,
or they make new games and then they shunt like the entire story because I guess they took a survey on that.
Well, I don't know if that might be more emblematic of Nintendo's core audience, because one thing that Nintendo's good at is creating really interesting it's a weird almost like presentation gameplay over story.
Yeah, presentation over story. There you go. There's a perfect tagline for Ultra Sun and Moon.
Yeah.
We have more Z moves. We have these two spaceship characters. We have this entire plot line dedicated to nothing that goes nowhere.
God. The Ultra Recon Squad has so much wasted potential.
It's everything in Sun and Moon and everything in Ultra Sun and Moon at least is like a pain in the ass. I mentioned this earlier in the episode too. I called it Sun and Moon syndrome, where a character shows up, does something, and then is immediately forgotten about. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't even remember Professor Kukuri had a wife if I didn't replay the original Sun and Moon like 5 times. And like she shows up, she does nothing, then you forget about her. Your mom, she shows up, she does nothing, you forget about her.
Yeah,
everyone on the first island, they show up, they do nothing, they forget about them.
Yeah, no, I completely forgot my character had a mom until I finished the game.
I only remembered because your character always has a mom. Dads just don't exist. Mallow, Lana, the chili guy, the Pokemon Battle Dome, even the Ultra Recon Squad. They show up, they do nothing, you forget about them.
But what's also really hilarious is that if we're talking about like Mallow, Lana, the other characters, etc. Like, if I think about those characters, I'm always going to be thinking about their anime counterparts because they have so much personality, and they have so much chemistry. In Sun and Moon, they just feel like robots.
Do you remember the Steel type trial captain guy? Because I don't, and I replayed the game a shit ton. Yeah, there's like the electric trial captain on Island 3. You fight him, and he has this other guy who just hands you Steel Z.
I know who you're talking about. In Ultra Moon, he was one of the Elite Four members.
I remember him so much. Goddamn, like everyone loves the golfer lady who Kali, I think her name was.
Yeah.
And she drives me insane because
her design is so bad.
She doesn't do anything.
She just shows up. Her design is so generic, and then she disappears.
I don't even have a problem with her design. I have a problem. Like I have the same problem with her that I have with like Professor Kukuri's wife, which is that they have this prominence. Like Professor Kukuri's wife, who like female Brendan is what I call her because I don't even remember her real name. She's like leader of this big investigation team that's investigating ultra wormholes. Think
But
that'll be important later?
I,
I would think so. It's not.
I actually wouldn't be surprised if a lot of this, like, if
She
this was
doesn't.
planned for the anime first and then they just translated stuff for the game, because like, well, a lot of these characters, if they were designed around being good in the anime, because all these characters show up, have great personalities, and are memorable in the anime. But in the game, they're just like, oh, the game almost feels like an advertisement for the anime. I'll say that.
Professor Kikuri's wife is like leader of this research team that's investigating ultra wormholes in a video game where the big plot point revolves around ultra wormholes, and she does nothing the
Yeah.
entire game
No,
at
but
all.
no,
She's
she's
completely irrelevant.
But in the anime, like she actually they actually get
In
married.
the anime, she gets freaking married.
Yeah, they get married in the anime. After they get married, she becomes a reoccurring character in Chills with Ash and Professor Kukui. Like there's this whole like subplot of her being a fan of Master Royale, not realizing
She's married to
Professor
him.
Kukui is Master Royale, and Professor Kukui like trying to hide his identity from her, even though it's stupid.
I wonder if he's ever going to try the ditto trick where he goes on stage and has a ditto of himself to convince people that he's not Mask Royal.
Okay, that's funny. That is funny. Oh my god, there was an episode
Mask
where
Royal
he tried
ditto,
to get
and then he's
there was an episode where he tried to get the I forget his name, but the steel the steel trial leader, because like they're like best friends,
yeah.
and he gets him to dress up as Masked Royale, but
He
Faba
doesn't have wrinkling abs.
but Faba comes in, thinks that the steel guy is stealing the Masked Royale's costume, knocks him out, and is like shit, and then he wears the Masked Royale costume and goes out. Like, so it's Faba just as a Masked Royale pretending to be the Masked Royale.
That sounds humorous. That sounds like a better thing for Faba to be doing than talking about how much he hates children and being needlessly evil.
Faba is amazing in the anime.
Faba drives me crazy in the games, though.
Yeah. It's because everything in the game is so shallow.
You say that, but it's like you compare the games to the anime. I compare the games to each other, and while comparing the games to each other, it's like let's get something else straight here. Like Sun and Moon, the original Sun and Moon, for all of its problems, like we keep saying it's a tight story. I want to unpack that even deeper and say that Sun and Moon is a game that's juggling 3 plots, and even if it doesn't do those plots well, each one kind of ends. Each one hits a logical conclusion. Each one feels like a journey happened. Like Lily is basically the main character of the original Sun and Moon. She starts the game as like this lost, kind of super timid girl that has with massive anxiety problems, and it's kind of like a story about her sort of like growing up, getting stronger, growing a backbone, being able to stand up for herself, and like her having to deal with her like horrible family situation, her brother that abandoned her, her mom that went crazy, her dead father. And by the end of the game, she like has grown strong enough that she's leaving the entire island by herself to go on her own journey. So it feels like she got somewhere. Then you have Hao, whose story is about like he feels incompetent, or he feels like he's doesn't measure up to his grandfather, and he's like chasing this legend. And by the end of the game, he still hasn't caught his legend, but he's sort of resolved to just keep on his journey. Like his resolution is not having resolution. His resolution is that he'll find his answer eventually. Then you have your main character who's just set on these trials. Just beat the trial captains, and eventually you become Pokemon League champion. You beat your trials, you did your things, you became the strongest person in the region. You started from the pits, and you rose your way up. Every character got somewhere.
Well, you're also leaving out Professor Kukubi's story about trying to set up the first Pokemon. Like this guy who went to the other regions, fell in love with like their Pokemon championship, and wants to bring that to Alola. And I think that was, and I think that works as like the big climax. Is you have this professor that you meet.
Professor Kukuri is, I would say, he is connected to the protagonist.
Yeah, that's what
plot line, because
it's kind of like It's kind of like a shared plot between them.
He's kind of the mentor figure, except he never dies.
Yeah.
He's had his story.
That's also what makes that final battle with Kukui so dramatic. Is he set this whole thing up just to challenge basically just to challenge you, because he knew you'd be the one to get there.
Kukuri's story runs parallel to your story because he's basically the one that is keeping your story going. He is an important part of the protagonist of the player character's plot story. He's the one that's like he's the one that put you on this path of completing the trials. He's the one that's encouraging you to go along. And all throughout the story too, you see hints that he's got way more power than he's letting on. That he's more than just this crazy guy who loves fighting. He's kind of like Goku, except he's not an idiot. Which is another thing I will say about Kakuri. He's not stupid.
Yeah.
Some people say he's stupid. I would argue against that. I was like, no, he's a bit weird in the head, but he's not
pretty
stupid.
he's pretty dumb in the anime, but everybody's kind of dumb in the anime, so that
It's
might
like
be.
I'm comparing. Sorry.
I mean that I don't know if these are the people saying that are talking about anime version of him, but the anime almost treats it like a kid show at times, where everybody's a bit dumb. Like, oh, why don't you just tell her that you're the masked royal? She's gonna figure out eventually, and you're gonna get in trouble. Like, she's not gonna be happy that you've been hiding this from her. Like,
One,
he's
she'll be fine. Two, she'll not figure it out. Have you met these people in Alola?
no, but that's the thing. Everybody is so dumb in the anime. And but you don't have any of that in the game. But that's also, I guess, because it's
The stupidest people in the anime are Lana's sisters because they thought it'd be a good idea to shove a Pikachu's face into the ground.
yeah.
Idiots.
Oh,
But I bring up like the intersecting plot lines because like narrative stuff is really important to me in video games,
Oh,
even
no,
in something like Pokemon. And the thing is too is Ultra Sun and Moon took me like a year to beat, not because it was hard at all. I fucking beat the game with 2 Pokemon, literally just to prove that I could. And like goddamn, and like it took me like 2 years. Not 2 years. It took me like a year to beat the game because I just kept running out of care to give. I just kept putting it down to do anything else. And I'd come back, I'd play the game for like an hour, and then I'd put it back down again, and I wouldn't pick it up for like a week or a month. Or I'd restart the entire save file to see if I could get some more drive to play the game, and I'd just run out of juice. And it's like Ultra Sun and Moon bombards you with characters, and it bombards you with like plot lines, but then it never does anything with them. And like I was saying too, like Sun and Moon, the original, juggles 3 plot points or 3 plot lines at the same time. Maybe not as well as it could be. Ultra Sun and Moon thinks it's a good idea to juggle 5 plot lines at the same time, and by the end of the game, it's only juggling House Ball anymore. That's not a euphemism, by the way. Shut up. And it's like it's like Lily is completely forgotten. Gladden doesn't really matter. The Ultra Recon Squad show like that's the thing too. Like everyone in Sun and Moon learned something. Lily learned something by the end of the game. Hao learned something by the end of the game. Gladden learned something by the end of the game. Professor Kakuri doesn't really learn anything, but he was always in it for the fun of it, and he got exactly what he was for.
Kukui achieves his dream. That's what.
No one accomplishes anything in Ultra Sun and Moon. No one gets anywhere. House still fails. He still gets the same lesson he would have gotten the first game. Lily doesn't grow up. She just learns to rely on the 11-year-old. Lusamini doesn't change. She just learns to rely on the 11-year-old. The Ultra Recon Squad don't change. They just learn to rely on the 11-year-old. Gladden doesn't change. She just learns to rely on the 11-year-old. You don't change. No one learns anything. It's a waste of everybody's time. No one was anywhere at the end of the game that they weren't at the beginning of the game.
Like really, the only character that made any progress was Kukui, but that's just because he's he's mechanically a necessary.
The only person who got anywhere was Kakuri because his goal never changed. He still wanted to make the Alola League, and I guess he pitted you against Hao to make you both stronger, so technically he won. But like,
yeah, Kukui's the only winner.
Kakuri's the only winner, but like. That you compare Ultra Sun and Moon, Kakuri is the only winner, to original Sun and Moon, where everybody kind of won.
But like even so, like in the original Sun and Moon, you as the player, as the main character, have the satisfaction to know that you have overcome your master. You don't even get that in Ultra Sun and Moon.
You don't even get that.
For all I know, like Kukui is housing some level 100 max stat perfect IVs in his party that you will never be able to beat, but we'll never know that because we can't face him in Ultra Sun and Moon.
He's not even like a beat the Elite Four again, fight him boss.
I don't know. I'm not going to fight the Elite. I'm not going to fight the Elite Four to find that out.
Kelly is a character too that drives me crazy. Everyone loves her so much, and I'm like, she never did anything. Number one. Number two, that pisses me off because she should have done things. Like we
It's
may have, we're probably not in agreements on this because you really like the final battle with Kakuri. But I was gonna say like one, I hate the entire Pokemon League. Two, I feel like Kelly should have been the final boss because I was saying this too in like a I was saying this too to someone when I was giving my thoughts on this because I was saying Kali was the last person to beat all the trials, so she represents the strongest of the old ways. And you, as the main character who has done the new trials and beat the Pokemon League, represent the new ways, and it would have been like an interesting clash between the two of you.
You wouldn't. You would actually
But
kind of want to know how I would have changed, so like changed it a bit. Like I don't disagree with you that that would have made a lot of sense. Um, I think first off, rather than like I really don't actually don't like how you can fight the Elite Four in any order. It feels very meh. I would have liked if Kukui was actually the fourth Elite Four member rather than the champion. Like he's like the final gateway before he beat the best trainer from the old ways.
like the lance of the group,
Yeah, if he was the lance of the group.
that would have been really good actually. Yeah.
Like he's like you're one step away from the champion, but before you can do that, you have to beat me.
Like because he would be the strongest member of the Elite 4, not because that's the thing too about Elite 4 that's always drove me crazy. It was called the Elite 4 because there was 4 of them. The champion was literally made like an hour before he showed up. And then in Gold and Silver, it's the same Elite 4. Okay, there's a champion. And then Gen 3 basically cemented that every region has its own Elite 4 and champion. You're not the Elite 4 anymore. You're a champion. You're 5. It's the Elite 5. Stop calling it 4.
I'm actually kind of disappointed in Sun and Moon in general that they specifically went with the Elite Four language. What was cool with the challenge stuff is that they were essentially 1 sec. It essentially needed. Oh, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Fuck.
What drives me crazy about Sun and Moon, like, let me compare Sun and Moon very briefly to the entire Pokemon series, and then let me compare Ultra Sun and Moon to Sun and Moon. Sun and Moon, when I very first played it, like nowadays when I talk about Sun and Moon, I actually strongly recommend it and I say it's a pretty good game. When I first played Sun and Moon for the very first time, I hated it. And I was super pissed off because like the trailers and the advertisements and the feedback, everyone was talking about how much had changed when to me nothing had changed. It was the same Pokemon game I'd played a million times before. And
Yeah,
like
something.
you change trial captains to gym leaders, they're still the same thing. You're still
Yeah.
fighting a person with a specific type element to get an object that lets you progress in the world forward. HMs aren't Pokemon now, but they're still they're still used in the same way. You still have your rival, you still have your villain team, you still have your mandatory legendary Pokemon encounter, you still have your Elite Four.
Yeah,
I literally started tearing my hair out when I heard they were making an Elite Four.
Yeah.
I was like, no, God, please don't.
Something.
Eventually,
Something that I was thinking with Ultra Sun and Moon also is how much the finale with how tight the finale of the game, how much of that colored my experience, because when I think about what I liked about Sun and Moon, it really is just the finale of like Lily's story.
yeah.
Like the first the trials and whatnot, it's all really a slog. And like I do think to some degree the anime has colored my perception of the region and the characters, because the anime does such a phenomenal job with it. But like I generally didn't like the trials so much. It felt more busy work. I would have rather just have just regular gyms where you went around and battled people before going to the gym leader, because the only difference with the trials really is that instead of facing trainers, you faced wild Pokemon.
Yep. Lily in Sun and Moon was weird to me because she was basically the most prominent character with who was given the most importance, direction, growth, and everything. Like to me, there are two really let me give you like two massive stamps of like Sun and Moon versus Ultra Sun and Moon of like which really kind of kicks me in the face when I talk about Ultra Sun and Moon. That's not a good phrase. Kicks me in the face.
Hmm.
It's like two massively important Lily scenes, or like three of them technically, really. Like three scenes. First scene, meeting Lily for the very first time. Second scene, Executor Island. Third scene, Lily versus Lucamini. All these scenes are like really, really, really important into Lily's story. And in original Sun and Moon, they're done really well. In Ultra Sun and Moon, they're kicks in the teeth.
Yeah.
Like you meet Lily, you, a random nobody who is brand new to Alola, has no ideas to its traditions, customs, anything, has no Pokemon. You and Lily meet each other in Sun and Moon on completely even levels. You're both lost in a world you don't understand without any Pokemon or any idea. But Lily is powerless while you have enough courage to run across a bridge, a rickety bridge, full of like dangerous sparrow Pokemon to protect another Pokemon. Like immediately there is a divide between the two of you and a sense of like a difference, and that like makes an impact on Lily throughout the course of the story. It's very apparent to her that like despite the fact the two of you are in the same situation, there's a big divide and she has to figure out what that divide is and cross the gap. But in Ultra Sun and Moon, you have a Pokemon when you meet Lily. You are immediately on an elevated position. Things
Mm.
are not the same. Things are not level anymore. And it's not really heroic or interesting or special anymore that you have the courage to like run across this rickety bridge of dangerous Pokemon because you basically have a gun. You have means of self defense and offense. You're prepared. It's much less heroic and it's much less interesting and it's much less compelling because of your elevated position now,
Oh,
but it's still treated the same way. And then you have
I,
Executor Island, where Lily like goes with you onto like dangerous territories, and she's basically like trying to forge out on her own. And then in Ultra Sun and Moon, she never goes to Executor Island, and that's pretty
yeah.
emblematic of the entire game. Ultra Sun and Moon, Lily does nothing.
Yeah. I think,
Then you have like your final encounter with Lily versus Lucamini in like like in the Ultra Beast world where Lily basically has like she's basically hit the peak of her entire story, and she has the courage to talk back now. She has the courage to stand up for herself. Even without Pokemon, she's basically willing to speak her mind to her mother who had gone crazy. And then in Ultra Sun and Moon, nothing happens. She never really has a big confrontation, and then Lucamini says she's sorry, and then she learns to rely on the 11-year-old. Nothing was changed. Lily went nowhere.
speaking of the confrontation with Lusamine at the end, like that was one of the most interesting things, like interesting Pokemon battles in the series, and yet they cut that out of Ultra Sun and Moon.
They cut it out entirely. They changed Lucamini entirely in Ultra Sun and
Yeah.
Moon, and actually, that was the thing I wanted to get into with you, but I'm not sure if I have the words to express my point because it's been a while and I've got a bit of a headache. But it's
Yeah.
like I was gonna say it to you, like how it's amazing how the little things can change everything on such a drastic scale. Because in Sun and Moon, you're given very clear perspective that Lucamini has gone off the deep end. She's like cryogenically freezing Pokemon. She's running horrible experiments with like the type null systems and like the underground labs. She outright says she doesn't care if Nebby or Cosmog like dies. She's trying to open up a portal to the Ultra Beast world. She's teaming up with Team Skull, and it's like she is not mentally right. She is insane, and she's like the way she talks is this like mentality of like being ultra controlling, and you can understand why Gladden and Lily ran away. But in Ultra Sun and Moon, simply by changing Lucamini's motivation for actions, you make a completely new scenario where things don't even kind of make
Yeah.
sense.
Well,
And
that's what I was.
astonishingly, you have a new villain now. You know who
Yeah,
your
well,
new villain is?
that's what I was saying in the first episode of the podcast. Like in the anime, they change everything about Lusamine. She's not crazy. She doesn't cryogenically freeze people. Pokemon. She doesn't know about the experiments going on. The Lily didn't run away from the facility. Lusamini sent her away because I sent her to live there. Um, because of I forget the exact reason, but it's like it's not like she's running away from the organization. Galadion's off doing his own thing. I forget exactly his motivations, but it had to do sort of with it's his motivations are more being strong and protecting Lily because of the her getting caught up with the type null experiments that Faba was doing in the anime. So things make consistent logistical sense in the anime. All the motivations make sense, like even though they're different than the games. Ultra Sun and Moon, they keep those scenes of like Lusamine being creepy, being evil, being insane, yet like there's no real repercussion for it.
There's no repercussion, nor is there any purpose for it. Yeah. And before I was gonna gripe about the anime real fast, but I'm just gonna keep talking about Ultra Sun and Moon. I don't want to lose this train of thought.
Yeah.
But it's like Lusamine in Ultra Sun and Moon is not portrayed as the insane, controlling woman that she was in Sun and Moon. She's just kind of portrayed as like a much more damaged woman. I was gonna say too, like when I was playing Ultra Sun and Moon, a weird thought struck me where in Sun and Moon, Lusamine was the bad guy, and she drove she made Gladden run away, and she made Lily run away because she was unbearable. In Ultra Sun and Moon, Lily and Gladden are the villains.
Mm-hmm.
Like they bailed on her when she needed them, and that drove her crazy. And then the events of the game happened. I'm like, in Sun and Moon, Lily and Gladden are the victims. In Ultra Sun and Moon, Lily and Gladden are the catalyst that caused this problem. It's like their father
that way.
Their father dies, and then Gladden just bails, and then Lily just bails. What does that leave Lusamine with? A dead husband and 2 kids that abandoned her. She didn't go crazy. She went crazy after the fact. And she's like still trying to protect the region. She's not like summoning the Ultra Beast to control them or for whatever reason she was doing it in the first game. She's trying to hunt them down because like she wants her husband back. She wants her family back. They walked out on her.
Mm-hmm.
She's in the right in this game. But still, she also made genetic monsters and cryogenically froze Pokemon. So I don't know. I guess she's still the bad guy.
Oh, there's no bad guys in Ultra Sun and Moon. Everybody doesn't do anything wrong, like or worth scoring.
She teams up with Guzma She teams up with Guzma because she needs more power to fight the Ultra Beast to save Alola, which again is a much more noble cause than to go to him because he's shady and he'll do what she says.
That's part of the whole thing with the whole Necrozma thing. Why it doesn't fit in Ultra Sun and Moon as presented. Like as I said, if this was post the Elite Four, then I could see it working. But the Necrozma story pops in right when like the Lusamine Lily story would have started, and it just distracts the plot from the and like it takes the plot away from what would have been Lily and Lusamine's like coming like confrontation of sorts. It's like they felt like they had to shoehorn in the Necrozma and shoe in the Rainbow Rocket story, and there was no way for them to do them both after the Elite Four.
Ultra Sun and Moon would have worked so much better as a sequel because then you wouldn't have had the original. Like do the same thing they did with Black and White 2, where the events of the first thing happen, and then Ultra Sun and Moon is like the sequel to that, where Necrozma wakes up. He wakes up because of all the Ultra Beast stuff, because Lusamine woke him up by accident, opening up a portal.
I actually
that makes a lot more sense.
I actually quite agree with that.
It would have also given the trial captains more relevance too. They would have had another opportunity to do things different, to do things in the story, to contribute in some way. The tapus, the everything.
It also would have saved the problem of Ultra Sun and Moon literally just being Sun and Moon, like 3/4 of the game just being Sun and Moon resold again.
Yeah, that so much was not changed, and the stuff that was changed was like, oh look, we added a Mantine surfing game. Oh look, we added a gyroscope run through the worlds game. We changed the boss from the water level.
Like it makes me question like where the priorities were with Ultra Sun and Moon, because the Mantine surf and the gyroscope, like going through the other worlds, were entirely pointless and unnecessary. Like, did we really need to surf through? Like, we really need to like do this like little mini game with the gyroscope to go to fucking the like the city or whatever for the I forget what it was actually called, but you get the go to the
Necropolis, I
Necrozma fight,
think?
the big fucking dimensional tower thing.
Yeah,
Did we need to have the minigame, or could we have just gone there and just basically flown there?
exactly.
It feels like unnecessary dev time for a frustrating feature, because
Well,
even
no, they had to do that so you could go and catch legendary Pokemon because
they could have worked that in other ways. You didn't have to surf through there. You could have gotten coordinates from maybe there is side quests in the
could have been a cutscene. You did like in Sun and Moon the original. Like what's his face? Your legendary Pokemon Nebby just literally just picks you up and grabs you, goes through portal. You're there.
yeah. And if they were like, first off, I don't think they should have shoehorned all the other legendaries in the game. It feels like unnecessary fan service just so we can get those legendaries on the 3DS. But
Yeah, that's what Pokebank's for, though.
yeah, but people don't want to pay for the Pokebank. They
Like
want to pay.
I was gonna say, well, while we're talking about this and cutscenes, I was gonna say like I just remember there's that scene where Necrozma shows up for the first time and then he slams the legendary Pokemon or Nebby into the ground, and I was like, that scene or that picture is basically the perfect explanation for Ultra Sun and Moon. Necrozma slams other plot lines into the ground
Yeah.
in order to make room for himself. That's the plot line. Like Lillian Lucamini, bam, into the ground. It's all about me. How? Bam, into the ground. I'm the star of this show. It's me, Necrozma.
Yeah.
Team Skull, bam,
No,
into the ground.
I, you know what? I almost would have rathered, and hear me on this. I would have rathered if Ultra Sun and Moon was like they sold it separately, but it was also a DLC upgrade for Sun and Moon, where they added the Necrozma story to do after the Elite Four.
I think Ultra Sun and Moon would have.
Add the town, add the fucking dimensional people, like the dimensional people. Like if they didn't want to go out of their way to make an entirely new game for whatever reason, just they could have just added that as DLC rather than
Like a
making this
portal
buy an
just
entirely
opens
different
up
game
and
for
you
the
jump
same
through
game
it.
with a bad ending.
It really is. Just it's like I keep saying that. Like Ultra Sun and Moon is Sun and Moon but bad.
Yeah.
And it's like how would you fix it? There's a million ways to fix it. Like you just said, make the whole Necrozma story DLC. Make it a sequel so you don't have to do any of the original stuff again but worse. Like X Necrozma entirely.
You know what's
Except
also
he smashed into them.
you know what's also like weird about this whole thing, and probably why the DLC situation wouldn't work, is that you can catch Necrozma in Sun and Moon.
Yes.
Like, and in some ways, it was just like a cool, like, oh, it's that secret, like, super Pokemon that you can catch after the game.
He's just there.
Yeah, he's just there. And in some ways, that was a lot more intimidating and interesting than what we actually got in Ultra Sun and Moon.
That harkens back to like the original Pokemon like games, I think, with like the legendary Pokemon that's just flying around and then you find them. Like I remember that in like Leaf Green and Fire Red, like one of the legendary dogs will just start running around after you beat the Elite Four, apropos of nothing, and then you just encounter it and you're like, whoa, wait, what the heck?
Yeah.
Or like in like Platinum version, the legendary birds just start flying around apropos of nothing, and then you just kind of encounter them and you're like, huh. Like that's Necrozma in the original game. It's like you're just kind of running around and then just all of a sudden, bam, Ultra Beast, and you're like, whoa.
I was to another extent, like I would have rather, instead of making Ultra versions of Ultra Sun and of Sun and Moon, just if they just made a third version, like it was like the Necrozma version. And
Sun, Moon, and Star, I guess is that. Yeah, people. I remember there was like a fake trailer for Pokemon.
Well, I could see it being Star because when Necrozma has all his power and as the blinding one, at least in the anime, he does look like a giant shining star.
I just remembered there was a fake Pokemon trailer for Pokemon Star. This came out like a month after Sun and Moon came out.
I think I vaguely remember that.
I only remember it because I was in high school at the time, and this one guy who was an idiot. I'm sorry to describe him as such, but he was really, really, he was stupid, and he was that kind of stupid where he was also an asshole, which is why I don't feel bad calling him an idiot. Because anyways, he was like watching the trailer and he absolutely believed it was real. I wasn't paying attention until all of a sudden I heard fucking Persona 4 music. And I was like, and I stopped what I was doing and I looked over at his phone. And I was like, what are you watching? And he was like, oh my god, like Pokemon Star is gonna have dating elements in it. And I looked at him and I was like, I was like, I can't tell if you're being serious or not. And he was like, and he looked at me, and I got this impression from looking at him, like, oh my god, you're serious? I'm like, that's not a real trailer. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, that's not a real trailer. And he says, like, it's from the official Pokemon YouTube channel. And it's like, oh my god. Like, I can make the official Pokemon YouTube channel. I just have to type it in. I just have to make a new Google account that says that.
Oh my god.
It's not that hard. I
Was it like
I
was it
don't
like
think-
was it official Pokemon trailer, but like but instead of Mon it was like M 0 N or M like degree size sign N or whatever.
I don't remember. He just showed me real fast. He like pointed his phone at me. He was like, "Look, it says like the official Pokemon trailer YouTube channel or something." And I was like, "Oh my god!"
That's,
So that was certainly, yeah. That I'll not I won't forget that little conversation we had
oh my God.
ever.
Well,
And if you're watching this video, I'm sorry I called you an idiot. Except kind of not really.
well, I don't think there's any better way to end the video on than apologizing to someone that you call them an idiot, sort of.
Well, there is. While we were talking about this, didn't you want to talk about Royal real fast?
Oh yeah.
The masked Royal, that is, and his rippling abs.
I've got no opinions on Royal because, of course, it was gonna come out. I'm a bit frustrated. It's coming out as soon as it is, like, mainly because they're gonna release it as a separate version. I'd be completely surprised if they make a DLC, like update for original Persona 4. But as someone who got the Persona 5 special edition, it kind of feels like a kick in the face to be releasing this all of a sudden. Like when I dropped $100 on the original Persona 5 for an updated, supposedly better with more content version to come 5 years later. Well, like not even 5 years later. I guess 5 years later, yeah. No, actually it's less because I graduated in 2015. This came out. It came out like. Did Persona 5 come out 2017 or 2018?
I'll just Google it.
Yeah, it was
I think it was
2017 because I finished it in 2018. Yeah.
Oh my god, why did I Google this? Oh god!
And this has been Bros in a Landfill, signing off!
sadness. Signing off. I'm gonna stop recording now.
Yeah.